Welcome back, fantasy managers. This is Devo1099, Tom with Fantasy Football Backers video preview for game week 27. We're losing the League Cup finalists, Manchester City and Liverpool, so those games won't be included. The Sunderland game is the early game with West Ham, so that's not going to be involved, unfortunately. It's not a very good slate. We've got 5 games on Saturday. The best team playing is Leicester, though they may be the best team in the league. So I guess you can't say that is a bad thing any longer. But overall, it's just not that interesting of a slate of games. But what I'm going to do here for the video today is really focus on Draftkings. I know that some of you have been trying it the last couple of weeks. Hopefully, you're starting to catch on. There's certainly some frustrations. There's some scores where you look at a guy and you're like, he had 22 points in that game. Like, I didn't even really notice him making an impact. That's what happens with corner kicks and some crosses and things like that, where they are predictable to a degree. So in that sense, it allows you to feel a little bit more confident with your team. You're not quite as beholden to goals and assists as maybe you would be on Mondogoal or on the previous scoring format of Draftkings or on Fantasy Premier League. That doesn't make it any less trivial that a guy like Kieran Trippier can come in and I think he had 27 points. He did score a goal, which was unexpected, but sort of a little bit extra for those that didn't take him to watch people that only took him for the crosses get a goal out of it as well. But those things will happen. It's unfortunate it happened the first week if you were still learning the game and you didn't realize that Trippier was an automatic play there. But you'll have time for those things to even out and for you to find those Trippiers before somebody uses them against you. So what I'll do is I'll go through quickly the 5 games, some thoughts about each, and then I think I'll go position by position just because there's so few games that I can actually take the time to do that and go through my thought process a little bit. I did make a couple teams for this so far, and there's just going to be a lot of Premier League on DraftKings here in the next week or so. So we've got game week 27 here. There's 2 games Sunday, which is with United Arsenal being one of them, which should be kind of, well, I would think dry, but we'll see. Regardless, 2-game slates I wouldn't get overly excited about unless you either do very well or very poorly on Saturday. I don't know that it's the best way to spend your money, unless you want to. I'll probably be there. So, but then Tuesday has 5 games and Wednesday has 5 games. So we've got 2 entirely separate slates for game week 28 with more than enough choices to make. And then we have another full set of games on the weekend as well. So, game week 27, 28, 29, all back-to-back, and then Champions League following that. Not going to be a lot of breaks. I'm sure we'll see some teams run into trouble with their fitness as well. So let's first take a look at Leicester, our current leaders of the Premier League, which is still a little bit strange to say. I don't know that I would put them as the favorites at this point. I think Arsenal and Spurs will probably settle that March 5th to see who is at least a front runner there. I'm not quite ready to count out Manchester City either. I think with company back, they'll be in pretty good shape. But they've got some ground to make up. So they'll need Leicester to slip up. I don't think this is a game they're going to slip up, getting Norwich at home. Leicester is going to be the chalk team this week. You're going to want to squeeze in as many of Leicester's players as you can. That goes from Schmeichel to Fuchs to to Mahrez, to Vardy, to Albright, and maybe even N'Golo Kante. They're all very much in play. Vardy is going to be back on pens now. Mahrez lost that duty, so I think that probably pushes Vardy to the top of strikers if he wasn't already there. He'll be very popular. His price is doable on DraftKings. We'll get more to the strategy for strikers here shortly, but so Leicester's going to be very popular. Norwich won't be nearly as popular for good reason, but as you've probably noticed, and I've mentioned many times before, Robbie Brady is a bit of a different player on DraftKings than he is in real life. And he's almost certainly going to be on corners, on free kicks, probably even possibly on penalty kicks. And Leicester actually gives up the most crosses in the league, I believe. So all those factors together, I would love if Brady was not playing left back. That would help if he was playing more of a winger, but he's been doing just fine from left back. So don't write him off just because Leicester is going to be heavily favored here. They are not a possession-oriented team. Norwich is going to have plenty of possession. So Brady is probably going to be maybe overlooked a little bit, but I don't think that's going to be the right decision. I will almost assuredly have him in my team. Next, we go to St. Mary's, Southampton hosting Chelsea. Chelsea's been much better. Southampton has been much better. So all of a sudden, we're looking at a game that is intriguing and sort of looks like what we would have considered in the Southampton-Chelsea matchup last season. Chelsea's, they're not going to get anywhere near where they were, last year, or even near the European places at this point. But they're playing much better since Hiddink came aboard. Even Hazard is starting to get going. Fabregas is playing pretty well. Costa's been one of the best strikers. I don't really like any of that against Southampton. I think Willian would be okay, except that he's the most expensive midfielder on this slate, and I just don't think that their matchup away at Southampton really rivals Leicester, Stoke, or some of the other matches. So I would say that on a general basis, I will be avoiding this game. There's been some hope, I believe, more than anything from some other pundits out there suggesting that Baba Rahman will get another start here after his play in the Champions League. It sounds like Terry is going to be back. If Terry is playing, I can't imagine that they start Baba instead. It's possible. I think we'll have the lineups, so it doesn't really matter if you're playing. With the early match with West Ham Sunderland, and you're deciding whether to carve out room for Baba, I would slightly lean towards him not starting, but he could. And if he is, I might be more interested in selecting him. There are a few cheap defenders this week, and he would be one of them. Not the best matchup. Target also for Southampton. He's gotten much more expensive. He's up to 3,600. He still does send in a lot of crosses. They've been going 3 at the back, and they've been very successful with that, with Forster back. So I think you're going to see Van Dijk and Font and Bertrand back there, and I think Target will be more on the left wing again. So I think that's fine, particularly if Ivanovic is playing right back and Terry is in the middle, then I think Target could be a decent play even at 3,600, and he contributes with defensive stats as well, in addition to a few crosses in case Chelsea has the majority of the ball. So Stoke and Villa. Stoke is a tricky team to really go after because They've been very inconsistent this year, which is fine. We can deal with inconsistent because we've got Aston Villa on the other side, who is very consistent, and they're very bad. But the problem with Stoke is even they're sort of starting to become more of like a Southampton in the sense that they have a lot of similar attacking players that they are happy to rotate, and you don't necessarily know where goals will come from, even if you know goals are coming. So looking at what I have as their projected front line, you've either got Diouf or Joselu leading the line, Bojan or Afellay behind him. Then you've got Arnautovic and Shaqiri likely on the wings. I didn't even mention Walters. Walters could be playing striker. He could be one of the wings. So there's just a little bit too much inconsistency there for me. And I think that Shaqiri, I would probably make room for him just because I think they'll have a lot of the ball. And that could lead to some really easy points from crosses and free kicks, corner kicks. And I guess whoever ends up playing striker, you have to take a long look at. That's Walters, Joselu, or Diouf. They're all, I think 4,100 is the highest at Walters. And then Arnautovic is 4,700, likely to be out on the left wing. So you could play all of these players, but Stoke might only get a goal or two. And if you've got 3 Stoke outfield players, it just might not end that well for you. So limited slate, I don't blame you at all for taking some of those players, but just preaching a little bit of caution that even if they do score, it might be hard to identify exactly where those come from. And outside of Shaqiri, I don't know if I can get 100% behind these other players. So for Villa, Sissoko, maybe. He's been contributing a lot with defensive stats. He'll have an opportunity to continue to do that. Bakuna, I'm not a fan of at his current price when he is not on corners and not on all corners for sure, and not really on free kicks. He's burned a few people here lately. I am a fan of Bakuna, but the situation really has to work out in his favor, and I don't think it's there when Heel is playing and maybe even Verito. Jasted maybe back, Agbon Lahore maybe back. They're very inexpensive. Stoke can be scored on, but I think they're differentials at best and not ones that I would be particularly excited about. Watford and Bournemouth. 2 promoted sides that are trying to stay up and doing a pretty good job of that. Igalo and Dini is the beginning and the end for fantasy for Watford. They haven't been able to really add anybody else to that. At any point this season, they had really any reliable players. Ake has been on some teams here and there, and Yom has been on some teams there. Even Gomez, but I don't think this is a match where I would really want to rely on a clean sheet or really on those players. I think there's plenty of other defenders to look at. Dini or Gallo, I'm fine with. You can be pretty confident that if they score, that those guys will be involved. So that's certainly a promising thing. And Bournemouth can be scored on as well. From the Bournemouth side, I'm most interested in 2 spots. So I think Richie, Stanislas, and Pugh, 2 of those players will make it. One of them will come off early for that third player. So that makes things a little bit tricky to trust any of them. But see who's starting and then make a decision. Pugh has been pretty good and is the most inexpensive of those. Richie, if Stanislas is not playing, could be a really nice play, as Bournemouth will likely have a little bit more of the possession, and vice versa. Stanislas would be decent if no Richie. So Pugh sort of the deciding factor there. I don't know that I would use Pugh, but I'm not opposed to it necessarily. But I think that just the other guys being on corner kicks and free kicks more likely is going to make their floor a little bit higher, which is what I'm primarily looking for, and their upside really. The other spot is Tommy Elphick could be back at center back, which would push Francis back out to right back, where he was pretty good to start the season, and should send in a fair amount of crosses if he is over there, and we're getting him priced as a center back. He's only 2,600, so that would be a very, very positive sign. If we could get him, I would play him almost automatically at 2,600. Particularly with some of the midfielders that I want to play. I like Francis a lot. I think it's probably less than 50% chance that he is playing right back. I think more likely center back. So be very careful about that. I'm not recommended Francis as a center back, solely as a right back. Last game, and this is a later game, so we won't have these lineups in advance. As you've probably seen with Draftkings, we do have late swap now. It's not as easy as saying, okay, I put McLean in, and McLean's not playing, so I'm going to play Berahino. Well, if you had McLean as a midfielder, then you can't slot in Berahino there because he's a forward. That's easy enough. So you want to leave your utilities open for these players, and then just keep an eye on prices of players that you're interested in. I used McLean as an example. Let's say you wanted to go the other way, or let's say for some reason you thought Brunt was going to be the best play, and then Brunt was not back. He should be back. This is a hypothetical. Then you may not be able to afford McLean. So things like that, they seem obvious, but there will be a time that you just don't think about it and end up in an unfavorable situation, and then you'll think, oh man, I should have just remembered. Why did I have this guy at midfield when I could have had him at flex, and I completely botched this. So do everything chronologically, make sure that it makes sense, and you won't get burned like that, and you'll have options, which is one of the better things that we can hope for. So I do like McLean. His price has risen. Brunt is probably back and will cut into some of his crossing opportunities on the left. I'm seeing that Berahino is probably going to play in the hole behind Rondon, and I think Sessegnon is going to be out on the right. So, dare I say that that's actually an interesting front four for West Brom, kind of surprisingly. So, if I could handpick 4 players that I would like to see for West Brom, I don't know if it'll work, but they're at least the 4 most interesting attacking players that they have. So, I don't know if you're considering Hennessy in the Palace defense, but I think that as far as West Brom can go, this is a pretty decent attacking side for them. If those players end up starting, I don't know if I would count on Berahino just because it's just been so inconsistent with him. For Palace, Balassi is potentially back. He got a run out for about 15 minutes last game in the FA Cup against Spurs. But it doesn't sound like that he's going to start. It's possible. It's him or Much on the left side. With it being the late game and being prepared for it, this is the type of thing where if you had McLean at 5,300, you could drop back to Balassi or even pivot over to Zaha. And also you could use both. You could use McLean and Zaha. Zaha's a decent play, but giving you the flexibility that if Balassi starts, that you can you can use him, because I think that if he does start, that means he's likely fit, that he should be able to go 75 minutes, and he's just far and away the best attacking threat that Palace has. I also think Cabaye is in a very, very good spot here. West Brom, is more than happy to foul tactically. They'll get themselves in a little bit of trouble, near their own goal. So, Cabaye being on penalty duty is helpful, unless I can't imagine he cedes that to Adebayor. But I think Cabaye will be on penalty duty. He should be on free kicks. She's going to be on corners, and West Brom is going to give Palace the ball whether they want it or not. So I think being the late game, people may overlook Cabaye. There is a preference typically to use players that for a fact are starting, that you're looking at the team sheets. So for the 3 p.m. games, I think that there's going to be a little bit of bias towards those players over Cabaye, and I don't think he's necessarily that obvious. Albrighton at 6,200 or Cabaye at 6,200 is really difficult. Albrighton is probably in a better spot. Norwich is going to concede more goals, but he's less important to his team than Cabaye is. So I think that that's a really close call. I probably would try to use both, but those are some of the decisions that you're going to have to try to make. So that's the game by game. Let's go now and look through some of the actual picks we'll be making. So keeper for me, just because I think I can afford most of the other players I want, I'm probably going to go, and I play mostly cash teams, or at least high floor teams that I think have upside as well, but generally you might refer to that as the chalk if you're a gambler. Just teams that might be a little bit more obvious, and I'll try to give you some more contrarian, differential type plays as well. But at keeper, just the way that this shakes out, I almost think you have to play either Schmeichel or Butland. On DraftKings, they are the most expensive. They base their keeper pricing off bookie odds. So, I think Norwich will probably get a few shots off. I'm not as confident in Villa doing so. But I would probably lean towards both of those, just because I think a win is far and away the most likely outcome. If you want to chase saves, I guess Foster for West Brom, because Palace will take a lot of inefficient shots, and don't really have a particularly good striker yet. I don't think Adebayor or Wickham is particularly deadly. So I could do that too, but to me, it's not worth the money that I would save and the budget that I would need. So I'd rather cut back on defenders than on keeper personally, just because if you can get the 10 from a win and a clean sheet, and then any saves is positive. Getting double digits out of your keeper is huge. And I don't really see any other clean sheets out there. I mean, always possible, but certainly none that are anywhere near 50% likely. So to me, Butland and Schmeichel are the two. Making that decision is a little bit tougher. Butland is $200 cheaper than Schmeichel, so that might be the deciding factor. But then at the same time, because he's $200 cheaper, he will be more popular and more likely than Schmeichel, so it could be a contrarian pivot there where kind of project them both similarly, so you may as well take the lesser owned player. Forster also is just in such good form that there will be some folks that take Forster. I think he's more bound to let in a goal, and Chelsea's in decent enough form with good attacking players that I don't really need to pursue that. So some players that I'm considering at defender, and I mentioned most of them already, but some to consider. So I think Fuchs is good. My concern with Fuchs is he's just gotten very expensive. 4,600 for a defender is pricey when he's not consistently on corners. He does take some, but his cross numbers have been, and the crosses include corners on DraftKings, have been 3-4, 3-4, 1-3, 10. So 10 would be nice. But he's hit double digits in most of those. He had an assist in one of the games. So it's decent. I think that, to me, there are enough defenders that are in kind of the 2,000 plus range that are pretty good plays that I'm probably going to leave Fuchs alone here. But if you have the money, it's a pretty safe play for, I think, 10 plus points. Target, I mentioned. I like him quite a bit. Playing on the left wing. Chelsea is not a great matchup, but he's pretty decent. Again, probably more than I'd like to spend, but certainly on my radar. And then another more expensive player, and this will be the last one of these that I mention, is Pieters for Stoke. He had gotten a bunch of crosses, and then we all chased him. I actually don't think I played him, but I considered it, and then he had 5 fouls committed and only 3 crosses, and got you 7 points for 4K, and that's just not going to do it. This should be a game where they have a lot of the ball. They may count on him since. And this is another guy I want to mention. Phil Bardsley is likely to be on the right. Glenn Johnson's hurt. So Bardsley's only 2,100. I think that is probably a much smarter play than using Pieters at 4,200. For me, I'm looking at, with the new scoring system, I think for Premier League with 5 matches where I don't expect a ton of goals, I'm shooting for maybe, call it 125. In that sense, you want about 2.5 times your price. I try to bump that up a little bit based on the position, so I might not ask as much. I may not ask quite 2.5 times, say, a Vardy at 7,400 as I do from Bardsley at 2,100. So Bardsley, I probably want 7 or 8 points from him. Pieters, I would probably want 9 or 10 points from. So that difference to save 2,100 and use that towards midfielders and attackers that I think could go considerably above, 2.5 times, then I'm going to save that money and take a guy like Bardsley. As I mentioned, Baba Rahman could start. He's 2,200. We'll know that in advance. If he doesn't, and you just love your team, and you need to find somebody, you can put Bardsley in at 2,100. If you have both, and you need another player that's down there, another option who should be relatively low owned is Martin Kelly. Suarez got 2 yellow cards and was sent off last match. Some of you may painfully remember that. So Kelly at 2,000 is decent. Against West Brom, got to figure that he's going to get a few crosses. He gets some defensive stats. He's played a decent amount. He hasn't played since November, but he has played a decent amount in the Premier League. We kind of know what we're getting with Kelly. He could get you 6 points pretty comfortably. So, and then the other player is Simon Francis, 2,600, if he's playing right back, which we will know in advance. I think that among those defenders, you're going to be able to find maybe 3 of those and not even spend more than 7,000 on your defenders if you choose. And then if you do want to pay up, you have to go all the way up to Pieters, Fuchs, and Target, which I just don't know if that makes sense this week. Midfield. The player with the the highest upside I think this week is going to be Mahrez. He's always could score 2 goals, goal and assist type games. Willian is more expensive and has a higher floor and still has a very strong upside. But I think I'd probably take Mahrez over him this week. I think more likely I don't take either. I would probably spend on Vardy over Mahrez because I think it's more difficult to find forwards that I trust. So given the choice between Mahrez, who is not going to get you crossing points or corners, and Vardy, who is at forward where nobody is going to get you crossing points or corners, it's the opportunity cost of using a spot in the midfield to use Mahrez. So even if I had a slight edge to Mahrez, I would probably still take Vardy in this instance. Albrighton, on the other hand, at 6,200 is very, very attractive to me. Shaqiri at 5,300, Robbie Brady 5,900, Cabaye at 6,200, Richie and Stanislas. If one or the other is out, those are fine plays. McLean at 5,300. Zaha and Balassi, I think, are fine. Probably more differentials. On the very, very off chance that Traore plays for Chelsea, he's only 2,500. So keep an eye on that. Even against Southampton, I think you have to consider that. That inexpensive a price. And then forwards, I think when it comes down to it, there's going to be a lot of Vardy, which makes guys like Costa a nice differential, even though he's more hot than he is in a good matchup. And then the Stoke forwards, you've got Arnautovic, you've got Walters, you've got Joselu, you've got Diouf. So whoever's playing up there, and then as well as Igalo's in a decent enough spot at home against Bournemouth. So that kind of sums it up. Like I said, not the most exciting of slates, but decent enough to play and get more familiar with the Draftkings product and scoring and pricing and all of it. So best of luck. If you have any questions, let us know on Twitter at FFBackers. This is Devo1099 signing off for Fantasy Football Backers. Good luck in game week 27.